Let's talk about why your top performers, whether it's at work or at home, need your help more than anybody else. Hey there, it's Dave Inglis. Welcome to the Chief Family Officer podcast. And I'm really thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you today because this past week I had a really important conversation with a client of mine that really helped me deepen my understanding and conviction around this topic of providing the correct level of support for our top performers. Because more often than not, you've heard this before, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. All too common, whether it's at home with our kids or at work with our team members, we tend to over index the amount of time and energy that we give to those who are struggling. And typically, it's our best performers, those who are doing really well, who actually struggle with a lack of support. So, where this comes from was a conversation I had this week with a client of mine. We were sitting down to review a previous commitment that we had. She's building a really great organization and a new level of management that's going to be supporting the producers and the sales leaders throughout the organization. And as a part of that, it meant that she was going to be evolving the role that she plays in the business. And really practically speaking, that meant that if she was going to expect that this new level of management was going to be really proficient in coaching their team members to perform better, that she was going to be committed to creating a coaching environment for her most senior executives to make sure that she's modeling what that looks like. And as we were checking in, I had learned that there was no follow through on this, that she had not had a single session with her executive team member. So I asked her to pull out a piece of paper and I said, I want you to write a letter to yourself. I'm going to go and get a fresh cup of coffee and I'll come back in 5 or 7 minutes. And in this letter, I want you to think about your top performer on your team. I want you to write this letter to yourself on behalf of them, explaining what it is that they need from you that they are unable to provide themselves. You know, what I had asked her, why haven't you followed through on these meetings? Her answer was so quick and so clear. She said, well, they're so good at what they do. The best thing that I could ever do is just get out of their way. So I asked her to write this letter on behalf of her top performer. I went and got a coffee. I came back. I asked her to share what had come to her in that process. And after she had vocalized that, I asked her, well, what is stopping you from giving them this? Because it wasn't technical development that they needed. Much like in a professional sport context, at some point in time, you're no longer teaching your athletes or your players what to do and how to do it and focused on talent or skill development. There comes an inflection point where the players that you're leading are actually better than you, probably at the sport that you're doing. And so there's an evolution in your coaching support that is beyond talent development. It's really around leadership development, mindset development, and supporting them in a very different way. But just because they're good at what they do doesn't mean that you just need to get out of their way and be very passive in your involvement. It's about evolving your involvement to be able to meet the evolution of where they are as an individual. And so I asked her, what is the reason? What are the things that get in the way of you being able to provide what this person needs? And she looked at me and it immediately shifted from confidence to vulnerability. She said, oh, I just don't know how. I don't know how to have those types of conversations. If they were struggling at actually doing the work, I could help them fill in that gap. But I'm not sure how to coach somebody who's better than me at the work that they're doing. And so I think it's just better that I just get out of the way entirely. This is such a common thing, something that I've heard several times over the years. And this is also very prevalent in homes. I've been working with a father recently who has a son who's really struggling with his schoolwork, spends a lot of time and energy helping him with his homework and being really actively involved. But his daughter, who's doing exceptionally well, getting lots of really good grades, aside from patting her on the back and saying, great job, keep it up, he's really not involved in her ongoing development and kind of the progress that she's experiencing. Out of a lot of fear that if I get involved, it's just going to create a conflict or I'm probably just going to mess up with her success. So that's what I really want to talk about today is not that top performers need more or less support than anybody else, but really they need different support. Now, at the core of this, when we kind of look at this question, what do these people need that they are unable to provide themselves? There's so many different answers. I've asked several leaders to journal on this and to share their reflections with me. Sometimes the answer is they need a place to be able to process what they're going through. They're looking for permission to be able to take a bet on themselves, one where they're starting to question their capabilities as they're navigating stressful moments, separating facts from emotions to be able to have a sounding board to make some really good decisions. But at the core of all of these different examples of what these leaders believe their top performers need from them that they can't get anywhere else is the desire for more self-trust. Self-trust is really interesting. When it comes to brave leadership, a great friend of mine, Philip McKernan, taught me this several years ago. Like, self-trust is a really important quality of being a brave leader. And self-trust is beyond talent. You can be as good as you want at your vocation or your sport or your academics, but self-trust is not going to be developed through the actual process of building the skills itself. Self-trust is built by having feedback and somebody engaged to reaffirm your capabilities, especially when you are in a moment of vulnerability. Self-trust for me over the years has never been something that I've really developed on my own. I've been able to absolutely exercise my self-trust independently, but self-trust has been built by having somebody reflect back to me the qualities that they see in me, or more importantly, when I'm questioning myself and not necessarily pulling on my self-trust, helping me reflect back to moments before when I've been able to do this really well, to help me connect the dots with my intention and my competency to bring that forward to the moment at hand. So self-trust is what these leaders really need. And this particular case and example with a client I was working with this week, this question and this exercise of asking her to write a letter to herself really illuminated what it is that she can be doing in those coaching conversations beyond a check-in or being a place for accountability. And let's face it, a big reason why so many of us avoid coaching our top performers and really embracing this evolutionary step in the way that we support those that we lead and those that we love is because this is going to bring us right to our edge of our comfort and our capability. It's asking us to really step away from the familiarity of using our expertise to develop somebody and stepping more into a space of vulnerability to deepen the human connection. That's the only way that we can really build self-trust in somebody else. And it requires us to step away from a way of coaching that we're really familiar with. But let's not forget, and I want to remind you of this. This is a result, it's a good problem that you have created yourself, something you should be really proud of. You're in this position for one of two reasons. Either A, you have made the choice to actively bring somebody into your team or into your ecosystem who is extremely talented. You've hired an A player, which is wonderful. But that means that it's going to require more of you, and it's going to be a forcing function for you to evolve and change yourself. But it's a result of making a really, really good decision. Or B, this is an inflection point in your journey of supporting somebody because you've done a really good job developing their skill development and their talent over the last number of weeks, months, or years. And so this is a good problem to have, something that is going to ultimately force us to look at our own limitations. I love to say the success and brilliance of other people is often a mirror to our own limitations. And so if we start to spend some time inquiring and looking around, what are the things getting in the way of me being able to more actively support my top performers, it's going to help us reveal where those edges are and really call to the surface our own personal development opportunities. But what a gift. So I want to invite you to think about somebody in your life and in your world who is a real top performer, somebody who you can trust time and time again is going to do a really great job, but maybe somebody that you're not spending as much time and energy actively coaching and supporting. This can be at home or this can be at work. And like I suggested with my client earlier this week, I want to invite you to take out a piece of paper, pour yourself a nice glass of wine or make a nice fresh tea or a coffee. And I want you to write a letter to yourself on behalf of this person, answering the question, what is it that you can provide them that they are unable to provide themselves? And what is holding you back from doing that right now?